Ooh, baby.
Ooh,
Here we are.
baby.
Episode 3, or shall I say, session.
You shall say that. Henceforth, you shall say it.
And what this is episode 3 of See You Space Podboys.
Yes. A delicious pun.
We are going through Cowboy Bebop.
We sure are.
One by one, chronologically.
Mhm.
And this is number 3.
Honky Tonk Women, we discovered. It was pluralized, the title of this episode.
I don't know why.
Why is it women? Yes.
Could be woman.
Is there even a single other woman in this episode?
Is the song Honky Tonk Woman? Because they're all references to stuff.
They're all
specific stuff.
They like to sort of port song titles into Cowboy Bebop without a ton more substance to them than just a cool nod. You know?
I found it. Honky Tonk Women
It's a
is the
Rolling Stone song.
1969 hit song by the English rock band the Rolling Stones.
Yeah. I think that's like number 2 or 3 on their 40 Licks record. If you guys are greatest hits collectors like me,
Like me for the Stones, baby.
I'm not a big Stones guy. You a Stones guy?
Yeah.
You a Stonehead?
They're all right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, they're
honestly,
fine.
there's another track that I really like. That's also they used on this show, "Sympathy for the Devil."
Yeah, that's a great
which
one.
I think that's a great track.
And a great episode. But that's way ahead. We better start our engines, right?
By the way, I'm Abe. He's Adam.
Yep.
We do this show. All right,
We're doing
session
so good.
Session number 3, Honky Tonk Women. 3, 2, 1, let's jam. Okay, so this is our first section.
What planet is this?
What planet is this?
Yeah. Good. I like how you read it. I liked your reading better.
Thank you. Yeah,
That's how aliens might do it. I agree.
we're going to do the play-by-play of the episode as quick as we can.
Yeah.
Just maybe throw some interesting tidbits here and there about what they're up to, stuff we like, but we're going to dissect it a little later. But let's kind of, what's this episode about? All quarterback for this round.
Cool.
So we're introduced to Faye Valentine.
Yes.
Who first walks into a shop on Mars, and there's some thugs who, pull some guns on her. And she fires back, so we get kind of reminiscent of the first episode, right, where it's like shoot first, ask questions later, right? But they capture her and they bring her to a I don't know what to do, it's old-timey devil, I think.
So this is like the space gambling episode, which is pretty rad. He's a casino owner fundamentally, but he does feel very like the devil in a suit kind of situation, no doubt.
Yeah, and he's like, you got so much debt. You need to work for me forever. Yeah. And she's like, oh no, I'm definitely not going to try to leave.
Right, exactly.
And one of the first things he has her on is this, I'm doing a business deal with this guy, and you're going to be like the go-between. You're going to act like a card dealer and do this little heist where they, a coin or a poker chip passes between them, because she's really good at gambling and she's also good at cheating. That's what we talked about.
She's excellent at cheating. Very quickly, they also mention, and he keeps talking to Faye, whose name we don't get till much later, as though she is the reincarnation of a figure named Poker Alice, who is like a gambler from the Wild West, I want to say. And I'm not sure if that thread actually ties together at the end of this show, but it could. Because Poker Alice is 200 years old.
Yeah, and a gambler, very famous, Wild Bill kind of level.
Yeah, but I think
Calamity Jane level.
I think it's a way of nodding at her actual backstory, which, again, we are going to spoil stuff in this show. I'm going to try not to do it until the episode where we get those plot events.
Correct.
But this does seem like it is a gentle plant for what's to come, as is another aspect that I'm sure you're going to talk about in a second.
So we cut to Spike and Jet, who are... There is no Ein in this episode. They don't need a dog for this caper.
He shows up when they imprison Faye later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they enter Gordon's casino, and basically it's because they're poor, so they go to the casino. What a sad statement about the Bebop.
No kidding. Well, this casino's name, by the way, Spiders from Mars. You know what I mean? Yeah. So they're really going all in on the Western pop culture nods. An interesting fact about this is that Jet says Spike's eyes are too good. He sees too well, so he shouldn't win too much.
Right on.
And they both
right on.
They both clearly can win whenever they want at gambling. I think that's what we're supposed to take from it, right?
Yeah, he will get kicked out,
right?
Because you can't
win that much.
Eyes
bro.
are too good.
Yeah.
I think that just means that what I think Jet is implying is we could take people for their money because you will recognize when someone's cheating.
Yes.
And you can defraud, you can announce their fraud. I think it's actually not that he's good at chips, it's that he's good at games necessarily. It's that his eyes are too good for seeing how other people try to manipulate.
It's one of those entendres that could mean a lot of things.
It also could be translation, yeah.
It could be, but it definitely is also a plant for something that's true about Spike that we learn later on.
True. Yeah, it's a good little world building and little tidbits here and there.
Yeah, they do a really nice job of sort of gently placing all the little pieces about who these characters are in a way that feels completely invisible to you the first time through.
Mm-hmm.
You don't notice it, you don't think about it, and then when you watch it a second time, you're like, oh shit, they were kind of planting that. I had no idea. So I'm just trying to point those things out for first-time viewers, that might matter later.
Right on.
Yeah.
The three old men are back, and they're playing Baccarat, I believe.
Love them.
And Spike basically takes some chips because he taps on it for good luck, and then he just, when they win,
give me them.
He just grabs a few $1,000s, I guess.
Just give me it.
Woolongs, I should say woolongs. But someone online pointed out that this place takes place in 2071, which would make the three of these dudes Gen Z or Gen Alpha, by the way. Just wanted to point that out.
Love it so much. That is thrilling to me.
It's a great observation made by the internet.
Proud of us.
In any case, Spike sits down, fresh chips, with Faye as the dealer, and he looks exactly like the dude who, just by happenstance, dressed the same, kind of has frizzy hair, the man that she's supposed to be meeting, according to Gordon, to do the deal.
Yeah, what do you make of that? Do you make that as
serendipity?
Yeah, so that's the thing about this show, that a lot of things with Spike are serendipity, but then also he seems to be 2 or 3 steps ahead of us all the time.
Yeah.
I think that is never, ever pitched to us as though, he knew he was this fucking guy. It always seems like it took him by surprise.
We're definitely going to track that through the episodes, because there's better episodes even for that observation to me than this one. The next Gateway Shuffle, which will be the next episode, has a how did he fucking know?
Yes.
In any case.
Absolutely agreed.
She takes all of his money because that was the plan, and Spike does nothing fucking with that information, even though it is referenced a little later. He's like, I knew you were a lie. You were cheating the whole game. Yeah. And I didn't say I got anything. Why he didn't? Don't know. Easy come, easy go.
Do you think that, so what do you think he thinks about Faye in that first poker exchange? What do you get from that?
I want to unpack that a lot more later.
Okay.
I just want to, just because I have 2 things I want to say about that. So try to remember that, because I would like to talk that with the top, because it's a big meeting between these two, you're right to point it out.
Yeah.
And it kind of peppers this conversation for sure.
Uh-huh.
But the last chip, Spike is supposed to give as a, here's us doing the deal, here's a tip for the dealer. And he doesn't do that because he's not, he was cheated, 1, and 2, he's not involved with any of this. And then Faye will get her debt sent away. But when he comes down to his last chip, he keeps it, and then he collides with the lookalike. And they do the old switcheroo that we see in heist films all the time, where the chips fall out of their pocket and they pick up each other's chips.
By the way, the lookalike is the shittiest version of Spike you've ever seen.
Oh yeah, he's like
like
he's a shitty.
He is
pervert.
just wilted Spike in every way.
Yeah, he's so sad too.
Sad
His eyes,
Spike.
he's just like he keeps him down, and he's just like, I don't want to be here.
He's the multiverse Spike that is failing in every way. This Spike took all his joy for himself.
All of it. Yeah, really. He's so svelte.
He really is.
Faye catches up with Spike and is like, hey man, what the fuck? You're supposed to give me the chip. And he's like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You're cheating.
Yeah, you're a cheater and no.
And then when a couple of casino thugs who are like, something's going down here, they approach Spike and they're like, come with us. And Spike is like, no, I'm going to fight a group of large men.
No, instead I'm going to have fun. And by fun, I mean beat the hell out of all of you.
And I love what Faye does, which is as soon as she sees, like, okay, so this got fucked over somehow, I don't know how, but
gotta get out.
This is all, I'm bouncing.
Yeah, I gotta get out.
See ya. I'm gonna break down some windows. So, meanwhile, Jet, he actually wins. He's the reason that they went.
Jet's always on point. I love that about Jet.
He's always on point.
Yeah,
he's just
always doing the right thing.
He always gets like the low yield thing. He gets like the 200,000 woolongs. He does not get the 6 million.
That's
woolongs.
a great observation about Jet. Like he's the one bringing in the bacon in like the everyday sense of it, but he's not the big score guy.
Yeah,
that's totally right.
We get an intro to Faye's vehicle, her Zipcraft, which is a drone apparently because she can control it with
fucking awesome.
It's little buttons, man. I'll tell you every single time. Buttons are world building, man.
Those little bangle buttons.
Add little fucking buttons to your shit. It's called the Red Tail. And she just shoots out the wall of the casino, which I love because
great.
We're going to talk about it a little bit later, but I will say this one thing. Mm-hmm. In this episode, she 3 times blasts through a wall. 3 times in this episode with her fucking Zipcraft. So it's just a thing for her, I guess.
I think it shows you exactly who she is. She's extraordinarily reckless and she's going to cost you. Keeping her around is going to cost you.
She's going to break shit down.
Yeah, that's what she does. And I love Faye, by the way. I don't mean to speak badly of her. I think she's great. But that
we're
is
going to
her
unpack
character.
The flaws of the similarities and differences between her and Spike, definitely.
Love it. Thank you.
So the shitty Spike obviously gets caught.
Spike.
And he gets shot in the head by Gordon.
I know.
Just to show how Gordon is like a piece of shit.
I forgot all about that. I was like, oh, that guy just died?
Like,
Jeesh.
Yeah.
Jeesh,
Real
I
bait
say.
And switch. And Spike is just walking out after he beats the shit out of some people.
Yeah.
And then and then we get an eye catch, which is the name for the little interstitial, like little bit of music over like commercial break, in and out from commercial break. You know what I'm talking about?
I might be wrong.
They call them eye catches.
I might be wrong, but it looked like the cover art for the New York Dolls record. Like the really famous New York Dolls record.
Yeah, it does like that.
I might be wrong about this. I think it is though. I think it's a New York Dolls reference.
You might be right. They do a lot of that stuff. Yoko Kanno loves American music.
I think it is the '73 self-titled New York Dolls record. I might be wrong, but that's what it looked like to me. Anyway,
back on the Bebop, Faye is handcuffed on the toilet, which in the next 2 episodes, I believe she's handcuffed.
Faye gets handcuffed to things in a semi-sexual position all the time.
All the time.
That happens a lot in Bebop.
It is anime, as they say.
Yes, we'll talk about that too.
And so they're like, well, we're going to sell your ship at least because you lost like Jet couldn't cash in his woolongs. So like, what the hell? And she's like, no, just give you guys know the deal. Give the chip to Gordon, right? And he'll give you the money. And they're like, all right.
What are you even talking about? Yeah.
And they do. And they also learn at the simultaneous, we get a Big Shot episode, which is just comes in at the most, in this series at the most proper times, where it goes, the Big Shot, Faye is worth 6 million woolongs. Oh, okay. That's really relevant information. It only appears when it's relevant because it's storytelling. But anyway, they were like, okay, maybe we just turn her into the police. But when she learns that she's like, oh, they might just turn me in for the bounty and they're lying to me. She's also, I love this little bit of information. She's like, 6 million. That's it.
That's low for me. Yeah.
I was expecting more. And they're like, how much debt do you have? But then just then, not apropos of nothing, but Gordon slams the Bebop with his ship, which is a great opening move, by the way, in space with things that should not be
space collisions.
Bumping. Yeah,
love
space
it.
Collisions. Very smart. These are smart people.
Yeah, he's a smart, no doubt.
Yeah. And he's like, give me the chip, and Spike and Jet are like, fuck off. And we know about the chip because we put it through our little magical science box that we have on board that like looks through everything.
I think this is where we begin to learn Jet's backstory. Like, part of the reason Jet always has information is because he's still got a back door into the ISSP.
He even has a guy he talks to.
Yeah, he's got a few.
He's got a few people, but like in this episode, I love it because he's looking at porn, I believe.
Yeah,
no, that's the next episode.
Reading a magazine. It's the next one.
yeah, that's the next one. Anyway, the whole point of the chip is that it's kind of confusing, but nutshell it. It's like a code breaker that can like decrypt any security code, but I think it has like a brother, or it's a key to a key, because this key, if in the hands of what Gordon already has on board of his ship, will then allow them to access the code. That's an important part, is that it's not useful to anyone else other than Gordon.
Yeah, because
they have to sell it to Gordon.
They want to run a money laundering operation through the casino. Like, it all gets explained in kind of a Jet is on to me monologue over the radio or whatever. And I thought it worked fine. It was like,
totally works for exposition.
Sure.
And the point of the conversation, they're like, all right, I'll give you 30 million wulongs. Let's, outside of our ships, hand off the money and the chip.
Yeah.
And then he turns to his henchman. He's like, as soon as we get the chip, kill them.
Kill him. I did love kill him. I do love the spacewalk transfer, though. Like, what a setup for a situation.
It's straight out of 2001.
Yeah, it's pretty rad.
His spacesuit is Dave's spacesuit.
It's great.
We have the centrifugal force thing happening.
Yeah, there's a lot of 2001 in this.
It's just 2001, but they do an even cooler thing, because Spike throws the chip to the guy on the other side. But he counted it because he knew that they were probably going to try to like fuck him up.
Yeah, he's Spike. He sees things before they happen.
Knows.
Yeah.
So he made it so when the rotating exterior of the ship gets in the way on the countdown, he could run away, which he does. So he throws the chip, runs away. The other guy pulls out a gun,
the henchman,
starts shooting at Spike, but misses because of his guile.
He is an NPC. So he's got to die. That's his deal.
And they have a standoff, and Spike ducks behind the turbine and sails into the air, and then hurtles at the guy, and then knocks his gun away.
Yep.
Turns off the dude's boots and throws him out to space.
That's a bad way to die. Bad way to die.
Then he catches the chip. How cool is
I can hear you fist pumping across town when it happened. I can hear it.
It's so cool.
I can hear you.
It's so cool.
Like, can we also just acknowledge this is when the John Coltrane jazz song, it's not actually John Coltrane, but it's a Coltrane-esque jazz song shows up, and it's like every time the jazz shows up in this franchise, it kicks ass.
Yeah.
It just kicks ass. Anyway,
it's called Piano Black is the name of the track if you're looking for it, and it's got this nice swing beat. Oh my god, the music in this thing is incredible.
Yeah,
I will try to point out the names of the tracks as we go. But yeah, Faye meanwhile is broken out of her handcuffs using a hairpin. She eats some of their food, which I thought was so funny.
That's a thing that Spike would do.
Yeah, just like goes to your fridge before she escapes.
I'm gonna eat all this shit.
Total confidence that she's not gonna get caught.
Right.
And she goes through her ship, of course, breaks through the wall, the Bebop hangar, and basically after she sees that Spike's in the middle of his fight, she just grabs the money and says, "Peace out, like bye."
Yeah, nice knowing you.
And Gordon's like, no, I want the money too. So he wants to shoot from his casino ship, shoots at her, misses. And then apparently there's this overpowered function that never reoccurs in the entire show ever again, which is that you reverse the polarity of a missile and it just
floats back at
you.
Yeah.
It just kills the person who shot it.
It's like the bridge in fucking Return of the Jedi. You know, remember that Imperial Bridge in Return of the Jedi where they all get blasted up by an A-Wing?
Right.
It's almost exactly the same thing. It's pretty good.
So silly.
Yeah.
They have this vulnerable ass window that they're just like, oh, I guess we're dead with one missile, which is bad ship design, just not good. Anyway, they're dead now. Faye goes off, is flying off into the distance
with their money,
and Spike, yeah, with their money. So they got nothing.
30
they just
million
have this
Wulongs,
poker chip, which is worthless and is like a perfect symbol of Bebop and its interaction with destiny. Cashing in a $30 million Wulong poker chip that is now worthless, and then the title card for the end of the episode, which is not "See You, Space Cowboy." It's "Easy Come, Easy Go."
Yeah, perfect title.
With their bounty escaping into the darkness of space.
I love that she calls him Gaucho, which is, I believe, a Spanish word for cowboy.
Yeah, and he's like, I like that.
Yeah, he's like, that seems right. Everyone else is calling me a cowboy. So, the show's not afraid to keep calling him a cowboy. We get it. He's a cowboy. Mm-hmm. This is a very Western-y episode, like the Gambling House episode, and in a great way. I think that is... You did a great job summarizing it, but I think it's time for us to push the sky.
Let's do it.
You mentioned the thing that I got really excited about when I watched it this time, which was all the nods to 2001: A Space Odyssey. Quoting other films is definitely a thing that animation does. If you watch Toy Story, there's lots of Star Wars quotes in it and shit. Bebop has chosen, I think, a very interesting smorgasbord of things to quote and managed to find its own unique identity in doing so. This one has the most 2001 in it, with all the rotating pieces and sort of the skywalking that feels mildly poetic. They managed to make a caper out of it, but it still has that kind of ballet feeling to it a lot. Even the motion with which that fight happens is sort of almost ballet-like. And that was very cool. And like, this is a thing you're going to see 1,000 times, but I thought I'd mention it. This show has the best overhead Dutch angle stuff. Like, just shots from over people's head. You don't see it in movies much because it's such an extraordinary angle. Noir films are the most famous for using them, like through the fan blades kind of thing. But Cowboy Bebop manages to use profiles and overheads in a really unique way that has emotional connection every episode. Like, they're very good with those angles. And I don't know if I can think of another property that uses them as well as this show does. So worth keeping your eyes peeled if you're a cinematic watcher.
Compositionally, it does a lot of things, or like tonally, it does a lot, and the composition is unique. There's a lot of really good takeaways there.
100%.
Mine for this episode is how Bebop does its like archetype mashup.
Yeah.
And specifically its characters for deep world building.
Okay.
Really impressive stuff. For example, in this episode alone, there's several amazing side characters. Like, at the beginning, when we introduced Faye, first scene, she's at a shop, and this guy is like, you just take a look at how he looks. He's like this classic medicine man, but he's got this like futuristic twitch or twist that is like, it's almost nationalism. Like, it almost is like Chairman Mao, like it's a little bit militaristic that you're just like, who is this guy? Like,
he's
what's
interesting,
his deal?
actually. Yeah.
And the same thing with Gordon, who's like kind of feels out of time because he feels like he's from the Old West, and he wears a suit that's flamboyant
with a cane.
And he has the audacity to have a fucking cane. We've seen a lot. This devilish type, this Cy Tolliver, kind of deal.
Cy Tolliver's
and his surroundings scream, I'm a starship captain. So it gives you this deep world implication, and at the same time, in both of those cases, harkens to a reference that the audience will like be familiar with. Mm-hmm. We even get a shot of Spike earlier in the episode when he arrives, where it's just a samurai film. And it's like, I forget what this text is, but it's like halt samurai or something like that. And Spike walks up and stops and looks off into the distance, away from the movie that's playing behind him, and you're immediately supposed to go, oh yeah, he's this samurai archetype, like that's his deal. He's actually more the Ronin, but yeah.
They do a lot of that stuff with foreground background, which is another thing you don't see that much of in anime if from my not entirely limited experience. Like the way they tell stories in the foreground and background is harder to do in anime because you have to spend more money on animating all the pieces. And that's a thing that I think they're very strategic about because they want to use all the planes, like the foreground background planes of storytelling for purposes. And that's pretty rad. You know, like even the choice to have one piece moving in one direction and the other piece of the scene moving in a different direction requires two pieces of animated material, which makes the cost go up. You know, so like for instance, we get that rotating like looks like a roulette wheel is like the building structure for the casino is like a roulette wheel. And it's spinning one direction, but then like when you actually get in the elevator and see it from the inside, it's actually rotating against the direction that the interior is rotating, and it's awesome.
Right.
It's like that's just fucking cool. Like, you know, like
what good world building, not just with characters, but just like, oh, I'm going to design a space that is super unique, but also indicative of like a luxury cruise or a casino, something that's familiar.
Yes.
Fantastic. Let's move on to the final segment that we have in this show, where we basically just talk about themes and some of the implications of what this episode does to further the storyline of Cowboy Bebop. We call this one "You're Gonna Carry That Weight,"
and you will. Man, we are going to carry that weight. Every episode gently adds a little bit to your back until it just breaks by the end in a great way.
Yeah.
And I would say this one's sneaky serious in some ways.
Of
right?
course, because it's let's talk about what's the obvious thing. This is the intro to Faye's episode.
Yes.
You know, like, so what do we know about Faye? And she's just as tragic as Spike is. And they share a lot of similarities, in fact. They're born of the same kind of, I would argue, crucible of violence and
desperation.
You know, and powerlessness.
Yeah.
They're both of them have been abused essentially.
Definitely.
By
taken advantage of
people who of power in their lives. And taken advantage of.
They're both also immensely talented. They're way more talented and capable than pretty much anybody else in the world. Even Jet, who I think is very talented, like capable as well. But like I think he recognizes immediately that Faye and Spike are on a universe of their own in terms of capability. You know, because
they're the ones
practical.
to go out and do it.
Yes.
You know, like they feel like the young bucks, right?
Correct.
And you can tell this. There's a line I jotted down. You know, the first rule of combat: shoot them before they shoot you.
Great line.
Which is a good line.
Yeah.
And harkens to a lot of like that sentiment, has a lot of good lines, you know, shoot first, ask questions later kind of stuff. But I love that it's a methodology born out of self-interest and fear response. And she's bragging about it. Like in that scene, she is like, that's what makes me cool. And that's where I think we start to see the cracks in the defense of arguably both of these characters, Spike and Faye, but definitely Faye, because Faye is a lot more, I need to like present and buff myself up to get respect. Spike just is a nihilist. He doesn't give a fuck.
Well, I think that it's an obvious attempt to mirror these characters. Even their introductions suggest there's a mirror aspect to them. I think the fact that we have Spike just sitting there enjoying watching her cheat is a way of him. He actually respects her.
You mentioned this moment.
Yeah, I think he respects her. I think, obviously, like, this is the relationship that if you're watching the show for the first time, you're like, I ship them. And I think
they both hot.
Well, and there's a kinship between them. Like, they understand each other intimately way better than anybody understands anybody else in this show. Like, it's all unstated. It's all fully known. And we realize that as the show goes along, they both know who the other one is. And they can see them. They can pick them out of a crowd. Like, I know what you're about. you know?
Right.
And I think Faye is actually a way of getting into the emotions of both characters, because Spike, being the cool cowboy, is never allowed to have the emotional fragility that Faye often gets into. But I think that the linking them together, like they're almost always doing the same thing and working at odds with each other in some ways in this series. It's a way of like sort of allowing us into Spike's inner world, right? Because this show is about Spike. Like it never stops being about Spike, I would argue. Would you dispute that?
I would argue it's interesting. I would actually argue that it's the opposite in that there's no small stories. There's no main arc, truly. There's no dragon to slay that they're supposed to. It just ends with listlessness, and you kind of look back and realize the whole time it was just that. We just popped in for their lives. So I would say that it's not Spike's story because it's emphatically trying to strategize its episodes so that you're like, no one is a main character. And look at the way that they treat everything. How the aimlessness of the show, all the characters we just kind of pop into and exit when we want.
I think that's a romantic idea about this period of their lives that is very between the big moments. Like, that's what's fun about this series is that Cowboy Bebop is a moment between events that they will either remember or define their lives more clearly. Like, that's a thing you don't see in movies and TV shows very often, right? Most movies or TV shows, you show the event that made this person who they are, or that will define their life. Cowboy Bebop as a show is about a period of time between those events for Spike and for Faye. But
it's true that we do have seasonal arc episodes. Obviously, I'm not.
And they're always about Spike.
Fallen Angels and Real Folk Blues. Obviously, they are Spike episodes.
Yes. I mean, so I don't want to make it sound like we never get anybody else's story. We absolutely do, and I think they're all satisfying. But I think that Spike always is the lens that carries the momentum of the story forward.
We follow him the most, and he's the most protagonist-like, which I think is an interesting thing that they're doing with the genre. I don't know if it's intentional, but they're kind of like, this is your man with no name. This is your Clint Eastwood.
They keep saying it. You're a gaucho. You're a cowboy. See ya. Adios, cowboy.
But he never really occupies the space of protagonist because his change is all internal and it happens all at the end, you know?
I think that's when we see it. I think it's happening throughout.
Slowly over time. I mean, it's happening as they accrue more crew members, you know?
I think actually accruing more crew members is the way that Spike finally gets the courage to look at his past. Right?
I think so.
Like that's basically what everybody here is doing, right? Is sort of waiting until they have it's like a purgatory of sorts.
This will be Faye's, as we're going to learn with more of her episodes, searching for identity.
Yes.
Who is she? Because she has this backstory.
Right.
That question and her absolute need to answer that question kind of puts Spike uneasy, you know, because he's like, I don't want to answer that question for myself because I already feel like I lived a life. So I'm done. I don't need to restart a life.
Spike is quote unquote looking for death. And that comes in a few different times. Like, I think I don't remember the name of the episode. It's the trucker one. I think it's called Hard Luck Woman, where there's a moment where Spike believes I'm going to die now. And he sort of relaxes and like, finally.
That happens multiple times in this show.
Yeah, that's the one that I really remembered
too.
Yeah. Anytime he thinks this is it, I'm actually going to die. Like, his reaction to that is very like, okay, finally here.
Right.
You know?
Easy come, easy go.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and I
which
think
we're going to talk about a little bit more. I think
that's
as
very
the series
romantic,
goes on.
But it's also, I think, a window into the fact that he is suffering in his silence. You know, if you go back and watch the first episode, like him looking at himself in the reflection after they lost that bounty, kind of suggests like that's what he lives with. He's living with that, you know. And Faye is too. Like, they're both looking, and that's what's fun about their dynamic is like they do see each other. I think like he sees himself in her, and she vice versa a little bit. You know, what do you think about the misogyny with Faye? Like it, you know, in the 90s we probably weren't as concerned, but they very clearly sexualize her all the time. What do you think about that?
Well, let me introduce you to this thing called anime. It's typically designed by a bunch of people on an island who are just horny as fuck. No, I just think that it's a cultural. It's obviously present.
Yeah.
It's a part of the DNA of the thing that it's like the tradition exists. You know, so I don't. Other than that conversation where it's like, should animes do this or not in general, is a much bigger question than should Cowboy Bebop with this one character be doing this right now.
Agreed.
Obviously, you can have a lot of opinions on the matter, and I think they're all valuable. I also think that Faye's sexiness is a part of the charm in the same way that Spike's sexiness is. It's just he's not being revealed with clothing, he's the Jack Skellington looking motherfucker, the guy who would always take my girlfriends in college, like the the lithe guy.
Oh, you got robbed by Jack Skellington, did you?
All the time, dude. All
he pilfered the Abe reserves. I'm sorry to hear that, Abe.
I got a dark past,
Hopefully maybe we'll face it over the course of this podcast.
And her name was Julia. Yeah, man. Like, no, but it's obviously. What do you think about it? Obviously, it's like it's obvious.
Certainly we've progressed as a culture. This is an interesting trope because there's a bit of femme fatale vibe to Faye all the time. Like, Faye's very capable, but also Faye will never not be in trouble. Faye's going to get herself into trouble all the time. And I think
she's fine with it, yeah.
Yeah, before this, she was always finding a way to get out of it, right? I think that in some ways, meeting these guys gets her into the kind of trouble she can't always get out of. I enjoy the chaos of her, and I enjoy the fact that she calls people on their shit. I also enjoy the fact that neither Jet nor Spike react to her sexualizing. So it's not like a thing in the show. It's a thing the show's doing for the male audience that's watching it.
It's not a harem anime or anything like that. It's just
they're not into her, right? Like,
yeah.
So it's really more for, sort of nodding at the audience. I enjoy. This is a trope that's sort of from a bygone era. Like, you just don't really see it that much anymore.
Oh, you see it in games still. People on the internet going like, they took away my titties.
Less and less. But yes, I completely agree. No. And I'm not saying we should bring it back. I like the trope of Faye as this person who gets themselves into a jam, but also it's a feint. Like, she can always get she probably could always get out, really. She's always got a bracelet. She's always got a lipstick thing she's always got a way out, really. So it's a game she's playing with us.
It is. Yeah, it's less Spike's her recklessness is based off, I think, her fervid belief in her abilities. Like, she believes in herself. She thinks she's going to get out, and she will lie and cheat more than Spike would. Spike has this. There's a form of justice that it may not be like they're all neutral good, right? They're definitely not lawful. They are in between the space of lawfulness and.
I would say she's chaotic good.
She's a little, yeah. But I wouldn't say that it comes out of nowhere. It comes from a very specific place.
Yeah. There's a logic to it, completely.
But they all represent good. But we are snatching up Faye at the time in her life where she could probably go either way and become a straight up villain. We definitely know she'll do anything for cash as far as what the show is thrown at her, but as we're going to learn later, there's some things she does see as sacrosanct, and we just haven't seen them yet. But at this point, it does seem like, she's aimless, just like Spike is. Here's the thing I love, because we also phase Zipcraft. Have you ever thought about how the ships that each of them own, not the Bebop, the Red Tail, the Swordfish 2, and the Hammerhead,
they are their characters.
They're all their characters, because the Jet's Hammerhead is the odd one out because that's a tank. He's high constitution. He's all defense, right? But if you look at Faye's Zipcraft and Swordfish, they're all offense. They're just like vulnerable tanks or glass cannons.
Yeah,
like
glass cannon.
Literally, Faye has a vulnerable large window that's the pod too. Like, it's a stupid design for a ship, right? And even the swordfish like has a gun on it that is so big, it's such a honking penis.
It really is.
Just is a fire hydrant. Because when it ejaculates, it fires so hard that the ship
it blasts forever.
So it's like there's these obvious metaphors that are coming just from the way in which the ships themselves are constructed, or the design. The design sense of the ship.
They spend a bit more time on that in the first episode when they like slowly reveal Spike's ship and he's whistling and like the ship unfolds and it has this like, again, like that sort of ballet poetry thing that only Spike has in this show, where he like when he fights, there's like, he has a philosophy about it, which we'll learn
Bruce Lee
later.
Philosophy,
water, right? But like you see that kind of fluidity, that the beauty of him in combat. And his ship really captures that. I mean, it's kind of like Legend of Drunken Master too. It's almost like he's at a different frame rate than everyone else. He's moving slower, and they're actively like agitated and have squiggle lines around them. And he's just like, I'm just in space, constantly flowing, baby. Moving fast and moving slow. I am not animated any differently. Yeah, her ship. I mean, I think the thing that we really learn about it is that there's no end to secrets on it. Like there's just, it has more and more things it can do that we learn whenever we need to. And that may seem like convenient writing, but I think it actually does show us something about Faye, which is she's always being underestimated constantly. Every man underestimates her on some level, except for Spike. Who knows instinctively because of his intuition. He reads people better than anyone. Yes. He can see things too well. He can see too well. Yeah, and and what's the craziest part, like you mentioned, he chooses not to just point out, hey, you're cheating in this first interaction with her. He loves it. He's like, all right. He's like, oh, she's good at cheating. Cool. Rock your grift, man. He doesn't care about money, I guess, but he does want those bell peppers and beef, man. Well, I think Spike is never. Paradox. Let's be honest. If Spike was trying to make money as a bounty hunter, he would be one of the worst bounty hunters ever. Like, I think if he left to his own devices, he's the worst. Yes, Jet is the one that keeps him on guardrails, and frankly, keeps them eating. Because Jet is a den mother of sorts, right? Like, but Spike, slow and steady. Well, Spike's not really doing this for money. Spike's doing this to avoid looking. Thrill. I think he's avoiding looking within. I really do. I think that's the point. I think that's correct. I also love that we get a little Jet in this one, which is it's kind of plot relevant because we get that exposition dump. Like a 2/3 away through the episode, where he gives up all the information to the casino boss. Like, here's what I know about you and your plans and who you're going to sell it to, and I'm going to do the ins and outs of what you already know. It's funny to me considering that's not a part of his job anymore. He just can't shake the cop. He's going always to be the detective. Except he's like, I'm detecting. Jet gets underestimated in some ways in this series because he isn't Spike. And that's fine. And I don't want to be like Mr. Defend Jet, although I connect more to Jet than most of these characters as a person. Mm-hmm. Jet has an interesting moment in this episode that tells us a lot about what is between him and Spike. And that is, Jet has a dream where a friend of his, Charlie, tells him, if you want to receive, you have to give. And he sort of is telling Spike about this dream, which is a thing that he and Spike share. This kind of mystical intuition thing. And he tells Spike, see, Spike, you got to listen to your dreams. That's how you find your dream girl. And that's Jet, I think, knowingly and gently poking at the catharsis, at Spike's catharsis. Like, Jet understands better than anybody else on this ship what everybody needs. Like, if this was a coming of age film, he'd be the wise mentor figure who's like, yeah, well, maybe you're going to have to, let go and grow up, like the solution to every coming of age film. He's the one sort of pointing at that. And you'll see that when the real stakes come out between them, he understands Spike better than anybody and what Spike needs. And that's fun.
Yeah.
They keep nodding at it.
Pointing out. It's interesting because I always thought that like Jet is more spiritual, whereas Spike is more just the mysticism is just a part of his philosophy, and he's like, I don't know how to deal with it, but it keeps coming out as true, so I'm going to follow this path.
I think he's superstitious. I think Spike is superstitious, but not spiritual.
Right. Whereas Jet, I think, as we'll point out more and more as examples, kind of come to light, he crafts his spiritualism.
Yes, he
does routine. He is the master of his domain. He literally has bonsai trees, and that's his space of like calm. The ocean is hitting him, and he is trying to be a rock. And he's successfully doing so, as we all need to, Whereas Spike is, I'm just going to let the waves take me,
I think that's right. Jet, this is another, so in animation, it's really important, of course, to design your character in a way that shows their inner world. Jet is the only one we see that has overt wounds, right? Mm-hmm. Like something happened to his face. He's got that metal cheekbone. Something happened to his arm. It got ripped off. Jet's, I think, closer to having processed his wounds than anybody else in this series. And I think that's why his wounds are externalized more. Because they allow us to see, they give us more of his inner world being reconciled, because we can see it, as opposed to Spike and Faye, who we can't see it. We can't see their wounds.
You're right. You are right. You are Jet.
I am. I'm such a Jet. No, I really am a Jet.
You know who I am in this show?
You're such an Edward.
I was gonna say I'm the slime that in the episode Toys in the Attic that poisons everyone.
See, you can't handle having a sentiment. The alien episode?
Yeah, the alien episode.
I love the alien episode. It's a really good one.
I'm the xenomorph, but I'm a little puddle. I'm a little puddle that drips on you.
Well, I think it's about that time where the jazz is playing us off, don't you agree?